Okay. Let me just check to make sure I can hear you. Okay. We're good. Right. Okay. Lonnie, will you pray for us?
I surely will. Thank you, Regina. Heavenly Father, we humbly come before you now as your humble servants, your creation, those of us who are not only crazy enough to believe in you, but crazy enough to believe in what your word says. Yes, as we go forth speaking truth, and for those who come on this call and join us as well. In Christ Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. There you go.
Amen.
That's good.
Neil Epiphany says hello.
Hey, Epiphany, how are you?
Can you see the chat?
Yeah, let me see. I gotta find it.
In the lower corner to the left, it looks like a little speaker bubble has the number 1.
I'm on a PC, so I'm not actually on the.
Oh, I don't know where it is.
Everything's different.
Yeah, it is different there. Okay, let's get into chapter 3, and welcome to everyone who is joining us on Facebook and on YouTube, those who are listening to us on the replays and on our podcasts. Thank you once again for joining us. I'm trying to think of someone. Oh, okay. Someone just came to mind. I was like trying to ping some other people in the room. Okay. So we're on chapter 3, and we're going to be talking about how science has helped to undergird and facilitate the idea, or not the idea, but the systems and issues that we have with white supremacy and racism. And so chapter 3's title is called Worshipping at the Altar of Darwin. And where I think I want to start is let's start at the beginning. So we have a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It says, "Violence as a way of achieving racial injustice is both impractical and immoral. Violence is impractical because it is a descending spiral ending in destruction for all. It is immoral because it seeks to humiliate the opponent rather than win his understanding. It seeks to annihilate rather than convert. Violence is immoral because it thrives on hatred rather than love." Since releasing his works encompassing new theories about life, let me mute you here, Neil. Since releasing his work encompassing new theories about life, its origin and classification, Darwin has been worshipped. Charles Darwin and his works are revered in scientific and anthropological communities and worldwide societies and cultures. His theories dominate the base curriculum in all educational institutions, from kindergarten through college. Further, his works have impacted cultural norms, government policies, and the progression or barbaric regressions of societies since their advent in the 1800s. The worship of Darwin is near universal, but why? Is Darwin a person deserving great praise? Is the extolling of Darwinism, the proliferation of his theories and works, warranted? Consider, if it can be confirmed that Darwin unleashed racism, would he be deserving of universal praise or disdain? If it can be proved he unleashed white supremacy, would he deserve worship or rejection? If we find he gave cover for misogyny, sexism, would he still deserve unwavering support? What if he helped unleash genocide and eugenics, and as a result, over 1 million innocent lives were lost? Honestly speaking, if Darwin is found to be the root cause of unleashing even one of the social plagues, it would be bad enough, warranting a thorough rejection of his legacy going forward. At the very least, Darwin's legacy would need to reflect his diabolical deeds with at least a strong footnote. In the same way, what if we find he was singularly responsible for unleashing and institutionalizing all of these: racism, white supremacy, misogyny, sexism, genocide, and eugenics? Sounds hypocritical or hyperbolic? Let's see. And before I keep going, I think we need to, just even in these few paragraphs, explain how is it at this point, when you're making the statement that his works and theories dominate base curriculums. Explain that, please, Kevin.
Okay. Glad to. So this is actually a good start and a good stopping point as well. I think you said if he's responsible for 1 million lives, I think it should reflect 1 billion. If it's 1 million, I need to change that.
No, I said 100 million.
Oh,
Did I say? No, I said 100 billion. But yes, I was asking, where do we see his theories?
yeah. No, I understand. Yeah, I got it. But I thought it was 1 million. Okay, so good. Glad we're clear on that. He's responsible for at least 100 million lives, innocent lives. And I think it's over 1 billion when you include eugenics and abortions in that number. Okay. So where is his theories most prevalent, and why would I say that it's really, I would say it's systemic throughout academia, okay? And the reason being is because it actually starts from kindergarten, through to 16, advanced degrees in education, and even more advanced if you go into scientific doctorates and that kind of thing. There is a heavy reliance on Darwinism. He did have some good scientific notations, with cloning plants and some of the things that he actually did discover scientifically. But his evolutionary theories, I use my fingers, quote unquote, these are theories that were unleashed as fact. Now, he explained they were theories, but the reality is the scientific community adopted them as facts. So that's where we get into the trouble, right? I mean, we can't even, to a large degree, you go to a school board and you say, look, I'd like to, since Darwin and his evolutionary theories are being taught to my children, I'd like to at least provide an alternate theory of creation. They laugh you out. Nope. We can't have creationism at all. But they continue to talk about Darwin and his evolutionary. So that's what I meant by that. Is it's pervasive. It's throughout. And we've all been at some level indoctrinated with it. We just have, not on purpose, not like we want to adopt Darwinistic thinking, but it's just what has happened. And so we have to correct that.
Okay, someone else pipe in. What is Darwinistic thinking? Lonnie or Neil, where could you speak to that you see this as pervasive in our curriculum per se?
Regina, I worked for a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. for a number of years. and we hired students out of Christian universities. And I was appalled to learn that many of the students who were Christian, attended Christian universities, believed in the legitimacy of Darwin and Darwinism, and would argue those points with me when we would have conversations. And it's been some time since I've been in college, and these young people were right out of college, but it gave me a picture of how things had changed. So when secular universities purport Darwinism and all that goes along with it, I can see it, given where they come from. But when Christian universities and even seminaries have adapted or adopted a belief in the legitimacy of Darwin's writings, and specifically as it relates to evolution, it gives you a real indication of how things have devolved, if you will. Pass the mic back to you.
Okay, Neil, go ahead. Neil.
Yeah, so I think the first thing we have to understand is that there are a couple of things that we should not get confused in. One is evolution is not the same as thinking the earth is old. I think it's very important to understand that. And evolutionary theory has so far failed in multiple places. And I just think this is important for everybody to understand that. There's a couple of what we call big bangs that evolutionary theory cannot explain. One of them is the big bang of the universe. The universe suddenly came to being. Science says it suddenly came to being. There's no way to explain that. Evolutionary theory has no explanation for why the universe came to being. Secondly, there is something called the fine-tuning of the universe. The universe is so fine-tuned that if things had changed slightly, the universe would have collapsed upon itself. Evolutionary theory has nothing to explain there. The third big bang that we have is called the big bang of life. Evolutionary theory has no way to explain how life came into being. So there's just no explanation for it. In fact, if you go to an evolution conference today, many people, many Christians who've gone there have said when you go into all these different fields, there's some excitement. Oh, we discovered this. But when you go into the concept of abiogenesis and where did life begin, it's like they said it's the most depressing thing, because every year they say we failed this many experiments. This is not proven. In fact, all these things that we thought were possible are not going to work. And so that's failed. And then you have the big bang of what we call the big bang of consciousness. Where did consciousness come from? And then you have the big bang of language. Where did language come from? All language we've ever discovered has suddenly appeared fully capable of everything. There is no what we call proto-languages that they've ever been found in the history of mankind or anything like that. So it's a big bang of life consciousness. So there's a whole bunch of these big bangs that people can't explain. Now, as a result of being unable to explain this, you end up with what we call the blind faith atheists. And most atheists I talk to really have blind faith in what they believe. Their only resolve is to attack Christianity. And this attack of Christianity shows up in the classrooms. In fact, we have professors in classrooms who say that our job as professors, and I have actual quotes, I'm just saying this from memory, but I have actual quotes from professors who say our job is to get you students away from your parents' homophobic, frightening religion, and basically take them away from your religion and give them our religion, which has no basis, no way to be proven, and all these unknowns into it. So you see this happen, and as a result of that, you end up with a group of students who graduate not with a intellectual knowledge, but with a dogma. They are trained with a dogma because they can't defend it intellectually. And you see this, and the reality is, when you have a dogma for some sort of belief system, it is actually far more dangerous than what we would call the reasoned or the rational thinking. And over again, when I deal with atheists, I see the dogma over and over again. We start pushing into the dogma. I say, why do you believe this? Why do you believe this? A lot of times their response is to call you names. It's what we call the ad hominem. And I think we are seeing our kids in colleges being trained by that. And it all goes back to Darwin's whole thing of, I can't explain this, but one day we'll be able to explain it. And he says that a lot in his book.
You said something that was interesting, Neil, about evolution is not the same as saying the earth is old.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Okay, so the reason I say that is because there's a number of different beliefs about the earth. One is the old earth creationists and young earth creationists. And the young earth creationists think the world was created in 6 days, or the world was created in 1 day, and then life was created over a period of 6 days or 5 more days, and then man was created on the 5th day. This is, and then there's what we call the old earth creationists, who believe that the earth is actually the universe is a few billion years old, and the earth is 4 billion years old, and man was put into place after the universe was created and after the earth was created, again, on what we would call what they would call the 6th age. And they split it up instead of 24-hour days. They use the word yom, is translated as age or eon. So these are the two schools of thought. But what's interesting to remember is that neither school accepts evolution. So there are Christians on both sides of that equation, but neither of them accept evolution. Evolution itself is a theory in crisis. In fact, every year we find more and more problems with the evolutionary theory. In fact, you can go into there's so much about evolutionary theory that is a problem. But on the other hand, there is science behind the old Earth, and it's debatable. That you can debate whether the Earth is old or not. But I think it's very important that we distinguish those two arguments from the evolution argument.
Okay, so what you're saying, and I saw you, Kevin, come off mic. But what you're saying, Neil, is that Christendom has its own debates about the age of the earth, but that is separate. Basically, they would all stand and say evolution is wrong, but they debate just Genesis 1. Okay. Is that what you're saying?
But I wouldn't say they would all. There is a group of people led by Francis Collins who are what we call theistic evolutionists. I think they are very much at fault. I don't think they have enough evidence or data to state their argument. They actually believe Adam was evolved, and I do not think that is Christianity, because if Adam evolved, and the danger there is if Adam evolved, then there is no first Adam, there is no first Eve, and there is no sin. So you will find a third group of people called theistic evolutionists. I have a lot of trouble with them and their belief systems. I don't think that they would not be considered Orthodox Christians. Right. That doesn't mean they are not saved if they have a personal relationship with Jesus, but I do believe that they're vastly mistaken in their belief system.
Okay. So I'm picking at this because I know we're going to have different people listening, and I'm also myself just processing this. So the reason that, because there would have been a time I would say, who cares if people have evolution or if it's there? It's just there. It's not affecting me, right? Yeah. Go ahead. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me. You want to believe that? Go ahead. Fine. But what we're seeing is sin and evil is always pervasive, right? And so it never just lets it be. It is always going to keep trying to expand and take another inch and take another inch. And so what you're saying, that evolution, and we're going to tie this into Darwinism, but what you're saying, the foundation of why this is an issue is because it disrupts the authority of a creator in the earth.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to say it just, when I think about it, I'm like, okay, the reason why it should matter to people of faith is that it disrupts the idea that there is one creator, that there is an authority, right? Because without that, then anything goes.
Exactly.
Right?
If you don't have a moral authority, then you are not obligated to anyone for anything. So in other words, if there is no person that whom you can't get an ought from an is, as my friend Frank Turek likes to say. So in other words, just because there is a society doesn't mean you're obligated to that society. If you can kill everybody or become the rule of that society, why not? Because there's nothing wrong with it. You're not obligated to anything. But on the other hand, if there is someone you're obligated to, then you do have a responsibility to them. And if that person does not exist, then you can do anything you want. Let me give you a quick example here. Let's say you and I are playing Scrabble one day, and we are in high school and we're at home, in your home, playing Scrabble, and we throw out the Scrabble pieces, and the pieces spell, take out the garbage. Now the question is, are we morally obligated to take out the garbage because of some accident of throwing the Scrabble pieces spelled out, take out the garbage? And both of us would agree, well, no, we're not obligated to the Scrabble board. It has no authority over us. We don't have to take out the garbage. But let's say we leave the pieces there all messed up, and the next morning you wake up and you see that your mom has said, take out the garbage, Regina, signed mom, right? It's a lot of work for it, but let's say she says that. Now are you obligated to take out the garbage? Absolutely. Why? Because mom is an authority over you, and you have a moral obligation to the mom. So it has to be a person that you have moral obligation. But now let's say, instead of saying, take out the garbage, it said little brother Timmy. It says, Regina, take out the garbage, sign little brother Timmy. You're like, what? That's little brother Timmy. He has no moral obligation. I have no moral obligation to him. He has no authority over me. I'm not taking out the garbage. You take out the garbage, Timmy, right? So it has to be a person. It can't be an accident or evolution or society. It has to be a person, and it has to be someone with moral authority. And that's the only way you get obligations to be good, to not kill people, to be kind, to be selfless. All of that goes away when you get into Darwinism and you are a random accident. You're not morally obligated to an accident. You cannot get an ought from an is.
Got it. So I'm hoping that those who are listening, and I am processing for those people who are like, I didn't get that. Listen to the replay, because it is a lot to chew on. But I think I understand now why it is important to address what Darwin did and why his foundational teachings are what is the base of causing a lot of these problems. Not that happened overnight, right? But
yeah.
It was something that, like I said, is insidious and will take an inch and take an inch. And before you know it, everything is off kilter. So I got that. Kevin, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I hope people understand why I surround myself with scholars like, Dr. Neil and Lonnie and yourself, Regina. Because listen, that was wonderful, exposition there. So I'm coming behind because I do want to directly get to the question that somebody asked and provide some additional reasons why. I think the question was, how does Darwinism show up, or something to that effect? Or what was it again?
You had stated in your book.
Yeah.
You had stated that Darwinism is showing up in all the curriculum from kindergarten to college. And so why is that? How does it look? What does it look like?
But somebody asked a question. What was that specific question? I want to make sure I get to that.
I was the only one that asked you a question.
Oh, I thought somebody. Okay. So here's the thing. So Darwin. So before Darwin came out with his evolutionary theories, certainly we had idol gods. Certainly we had people that didn't believe in God. When Darwin, as a scientific mind that was renowned at the time, comes out and says, look, there is no God. Everything happens because of evolution. Let me describe to you my theories of evolution and how everything came into being. This was so seductive and compelling. And in a lot of people's minds at the time reasoned, even to this very day. Let me give you some examples of what happened when he declared there is no God. So Karl Marx, which we'll get into shortly, was actually born and raised in a Christian household. His mother, father, everything. He was Christian man. Hitler, Stalin, Lenin, all grew up with a Protestant or some sort of Christian background that they held on to. Hugh Hefner, Christian background that he grew up with, and I think he was thinking about going into priesthood at one point. Hugh Hefner, the guy who started Playboy. One thing completely changed their trajectory. That thing was Darwin and his evolutionary theory. When they read that, their whole world changed by their own admission. They said, look, man, Darwin set me afire, boy. He set me free. This is what these guys said. So here's the problem. 95 or so, it's hard for them to pin down, but to this very day, 90+% of scientists adhere to Darwinistic thought. So Darwinistic thought is pervasive. The reason why scientists, by and large, cannot accept that a theory of creation, that there is a God. And I think I've never met a scientist, let alone a doctor, very few doctors, who actually believe in God. And the reason is because this theory, they may not accept all aspects of it, which we'll get into, but they accept it at its core, and it's rooted into, and it's completely discombobulated their capacity at their soul level to accept the God. So Darwin's work was just unbelievably successful for the demonic realm. So I hope this is giving perspective. This is not like, well, this is evolutionary theory. This can't even be proven. No. I agree wholeheartedly with everything Neil said. But I want people to really, really understand the seductive nature of what Darwin proposed and how it pervades to this very day throughout academia, science, medical. It's incredible. And all of the people that it sullied ruined their eternal, their soul. And the problem is we're letting our children, we're subjecting our children to this very day. So I just wanted to add that, just so we have a little bit of perspective on how heavy his work was. I mean, serious.
Yeah, let me add one more thing to that. In line with what Kevin was saying, a lot of times there are actually atheists, famous atheists, who have said very publicly, it's not that I don't believe in God. It's more that I don't want to believe in God. I don't want to be morally responsible to anybody or anything. I want the freedom to do what I want, when I want, and how I want. So you can see that a lot of that is what came out in Marx and Hefner and all these guys and even Stalin to a lot of extent said, I'm glad that there is no God, because I want to do this evil. I desire to do evil, and I don't want to be morally accountable. So it released these people to allow them to do what their evil, sinful heart desired.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lonnie.
Just wanted to sum up what you gentlemen are saying. It's what came to me is Darwin has become like Wikipedia for those who believe it and justify the things that are taking place today. Our culture is looks to Darwin the way folks look to Wikipedia. That old saying we used to laugh and say, it must be true because it's on Wikipedia. And I've had folks actually say that to me because they did not understand that Wikipedia was just a point of gathering information. It wasn't mediated by anybody. And Darwinism has become that in society today, because I see folks quoting it all the time in justification for becoming socialist and various other idioms that are truly, when you research them, negative. It's fascinating to see how powerful one individual who becomes accepted. I remember in school when Darwinism was taught as theory. I went to private school and then I went to public school. In both public and private, they talked about Darwin, but they said it was theory because they also talked about creationism in class. But, I'm putting some serious age on myself here because that has not been a part of the education apparatus for some years now. But it at least was taught then that it was theory. And now it's accepted as a fact. Amen. Pass the mic back to you.
One of the things that came while you guys were talking, and I want to just make sure that in context, we understand we are in an information age right now. Yeah. Darwin was born, in the 1800s?
Yep.
Okay. So from the 1800s until 1983, we did not have the internet. I mean, we have the internet now in a way that allows people for search for information, share information regularly, get connected with people in a way that just was not possible before. And I think one of our earlier episodes we talked about, and we kind of laughed like, there was mail and everyone lived for the delivery man on the horse, who would ride into your town and bring your letters from far away. And we lived on mail. We didn't know what internet was. There was no way to connect groups of thought worldwide. And so when you find a pervasive thought or a scientist, right, that is speaking and saying, listen, this is your justification to not have a moral authority. And we see some of the worst atrocities happening to humanity after that time, where there are wars, where people killing people. But do we see a proliferation of violence, of slavery, of inhumane acts one towards another? We were, as humans, we did cruel things to each other. You can read the Bible and see that, So we're not denying that man was not sinful.
Right.
What we're stating here is that Darwin and evolution and his thoughts unleashed, in the mid 1800s or whenever he started having and writing those things and having it then released into the public, and schools of thought and people are saying, oh, this is a scientist. Now if a scientist says something, we're like, we're going to go on the internet, we're going to search it out, we're going to, talk to each other, and we don't believe it, or we do believe it, but rarely now do we believe everything at face value. Right. That was not the case before.
Right.
And so with those foundations, with being able to enter in at that point and establish how education is done, how schools are done, how government is run, if you're having this proliferation of no moral authority and it's justified by science, you're going to create some foundations in countries and nations and people group that are going to be detrimental to the weak.
Yeah.
And so with that, I want to yield my mic for a moment. Major Daughter, glad to have you. Did you want to say something, or are you just listening?
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm just listening because I'm just still getting on, but very interesting conversation. So I'll definitely say something if I have to. Thank you, Neil. Kevin, good to see you once again. So I'm right here.
Thank you. And it's late for her. Major Daughter's in South Africa. So thank you for joining us. Okay, let's continue. I'm going to jump back into Kevin's book. I am in chapter 3, and I only read like a page and a half. So we stopped for dialogue. So we're not in a rush to, get through these chapters. Okay, I'm in chapter 3. And all right, here we go. It would defeat the purpose of this book to veer into purely ideological paths and push conspiratorial assertions that fault someone without factual justification and confirmation. We must soberly realize that since the fall of man in the Garden of Eden, evil was unleashed. And as a result, there has been unscrupulously notorious people driven by manifest evil. Human evil has persisted and opportunistically spread as far as its many participants would take it. The participants extended evil when they participated in extreme partiality, racism, and supremacy, encouraged unequal and malicious treatment of women, females, and possessed fervent xenophobia, which led to the extermination of tribes and ethnicities outside of their own. Genocide and eugenics fall into that category of evil. All these human atrocities existed in some form and were carried out in eras predating Darwin. So how can anyone then assert Darwin is singularly responsible and should be held with contempt due to the profound impact of the worst horrors and atrocities in human history? The answer, as discussed before, is language. Darwin and his followers recklessly unleashed newly generated linguistic distinctions that gave these kinds of evil a justification, momentum, and acceleration. The rest of this book documents how Darwin's theories and assertions gave rise to the worst atrocities in human history. Notably, Darwin's work did not blare out through a megaphone to demand people accept his ideas. Instead, the ideas in his writings were subtle and seductive. Without fanfare, Darwin made assessments and announced theories, which merely declared how he felt the world is constituted. He didn't have to scream or shout demands for the embrace of his new distinctions and the resulting change in societal parlance. He just provided scientific and anthropological assessments that were seductively compelling, as they unfortunately catered perfectly to evil hearts of fallen humankind. Compared to the wholesome truth, it seems that when unleashed, evil more easily catches traction and momentum against the masses. Anyone have any comments about what I just read? I think it kind of summed up what we were talking about, right? Yep. That it's seductive, it's insidious, it was spreading, but it was the language that he gave them. And I forgot the anthropology. That's good. Can you explain the anthropology? What do you mean by anthropology, Kevin?
So Darwin was not, he wasn't just a sort of just a basic rudimentary scientist. He was, sort of anthropological. He was a materialist, naturalist. He had various notable sort of additional qualifications behind his name, right? Anthropology is anthropologists basically study, correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, but they sort of study human evolvement and human nature and put it in context with society and changes within society, right?
Yes.
So anthropologist, he was the guy basically to kind of dictate and try to help us to understand, hey, here's human evolvement, and this is how it's relevant to our current context, societally and culturally. So when he would say something like, look, I'm at war against God, which he did say, and there is no God, which he did, of course, assert, then there's serious context for that anthropologically, right? Society starts to say, oh, wow, okay, good. We don't have to be this Christian nation. We don't have to adhere to morals and values. We can actually start to transcend and traverse our interactions in this way because, hey, Darwin already said, look, we're cool. So in that way, when he spoke, it gave new distinction. It gave new anthropological reality, so people can live it out in a way that they hadn't lived out before. So it changed societies in that way, even at that time, into this very day.
That's good. That reminds me of something. Nothing is by chance. That reminds me of something I saw just scanning through my Facebook page the other day, and I had to go back, and I think it fits in with what we're talking about. There's a physician called J. Marion Sims is his name, and he's considered the father of gynecology. Now, he lived in the 1800s, but a lot of things we understand, he's considered the father of modern gynecology. What we need to understand about him is that he performed all of these different surgeries on enslaved Black women without giving them anesthesia, because scientifically he believed that they didn't feel pain the way that white women did.
Yikes.
And he is also connected to the syphilis with, was it Tuskegee?
Yep.
The Tuskegee, syphilis
Tuskegee.
experiment, and Henrietta Lacks. And so you just look up his name. I'll say it to you again. It's James Sims. Okay. And so what we see is that science has set itself up in a way without any moral authority to perform and do things to others. I can't imagine having surgery performed on me without anesthesiology because you think as a Black woman, I feel pain differently than white women. Of course, many died and didn't survive all of those things. But what gives us this right to treat another human being who walks upright and breathes air and can give life and can love siblings and children and others, yet we believe for the name of science, these things are okay.
Yep.
And so I think as we step back and begin to see that the idea of anthropology, the idea of studying humans and how they're formed, their skull shapes, and all of those things that they did that kind of defined who is acceptable and who is not, has been very catastrophic.
Yeah.
The hard thing is when you want to pull that back and look at that, because it unravels what we understand and what we live for today. Yeah. Right? It breaks down and tears apart those foundations of, because who doesn't want to go see a gynecological doctor, I cannot say that word, but you know what I mean, a GYN, right? Who doesn't want to go see a GYN when we need to see a GYN?
Right.
And so any doctor who was also trained to be a GYN is going to say they owe a lot of what they know and what they do to this person who, J. Sims, performed these atrocious experiments. And so everything is kind of woven together that we don't want to air the dirty secrets, right? We don't want to call accountability, and how do we begin to even think about retracting from that? And I don't know that, we're trying to say, oh, all GYN doctors are evil, but what I'm saying is there is something that has a hold on, that they're beholden to, right? How can a GYN doctor, not appreciate their craft and yet at the same time give acknowledgement to how they learned the things they learned by that process, And so it's kind of like you just got to sweep it under the rug. That's in the past. It doesn't matter.
Wow.
But it's pervasive, though.
Wow.
And so it's going to be hard to pull those pieces apart, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Regina, I was just thinking, and adding to your thought, that our Judeo-Christian faith used to be the final determiner, if that's a word, of validity, the measuring stick, the barometer for all things. And then once that was moved out of the equation as to being illegitimate, with Darwin coming into prominence, that all changed and opened up the door for, this GYN that you speak of, that's looked at as one of the fathers of gynecology, and all the other atrocities that took place in the world, leading up to World War II and slavery and all those things. And so when you remove faith out of the equation, it just opens that Pandora's box, amen, of what can be done and evil that can prevail.
And I'd like to add on to that. Thank you for that, Lonnie. But getting to furthering that point, that doctor was a Darwinist, I can guarantee you. And what he believed is what Darwin believed when Darwin unleashed, this whole idea that some of us are subhuman, which I know we'll get to ultimately. But that mindset in a doctor's mind will give them then, cover, if you will, for them to do these kinds of grotesque experiments on other people. So Josef Mengele, Hitler's, guy, the grotesque experiments he did on the Jews it's just too abhorrent to even think of. And this guy Sims, obviously, he felt that the reason why he felt differently about Black women is because he believed and he imbibed and he embraced at some level Darwinistic thought. This is how it's carried out in the marketplace. This is how it's carried out in society and culture. So some people would say, well, I don't think people believe in Darwin today. No, it's pervasive. It's everywhere. When we see these distinctions, this is Darwinism. Okay. So, yeah, I'll yield the mic.
We don't even want to get into it. We get Neil going about COVID-19 and vaccinations, right? What is the thought process of the medical community, right? And I know Major Daughter could tell you people that she's interviewed, and because I've watched them, she's a great interviewer, has a great television network over in South Africa and a few other countries. But the conversation, people dying from COVID vaccinations, people dying from COVID, and what is the medical community allowed to be okay, because there is this grain of thought from Darwin and in their teaching and what they learned.
I thank you for that, because you set something else off. And I know Neil has a whole book on this by virtue of Robert Kennedy. But here's the deal. Dr. Fauci, based on his actions, not on what he's saying with his mouth or what he would, based on his action, is a Darwinist at heart. Now, the reason why I say that is, look, he's provided, in his past, during the AIDS and all of that, he specifically isolated Black men and Black people to these grotesque early AIDS experiments. He specifically, did these horrible atrocities through his career. I'm not saying today, but he has this distinction in his mind that, some people are not as equal as others. And I'm only saying that based on action. So I've never met the guy, I don't know. But when you look at his history, you'll know. Neil knows a lot more about Dr. Fauci, but I'm telling you, this guy is Darwinist at heart. Neil, you have anything more to say about that?
Oh, yes, Neil.
No, I won't go too much into it, but I think if you look at anyone who can be so immoral, Fauci has done HIV/AIDS experiments on young Black foster kids in New York as recently as 2005. In fact, there's a whole BBC article on him. He's done experiments on dogs, cutting their vocal cords while they're being eaten alive by fleas, so they don't hear their yelping. Just things like this. And then, of course, the latest thing where he's accepted money from Pfizer and Moderna to allow them to release vaccines that have never been tested on human beings until they were tested on human beings, right? So, and in mass quantities. And so you can't really, you can't really assume that someone like that thinks that there's a God in heaven, right?
Okay.
And the only way he can get to that point is that he believes that that he will never be judged. He will never have to face up to what he's doing.
Yeah.
And that could only happen through training. You know
Right.
what I mean? It's hard to walk through this earth and think that there is not a creator, or there's no one that you will have to be accountable to. But if you submit yourself, whether in college or medical school, or even if you join a cult, the whole point is people don't just turn out that way
Right.
without some real, I think, training
That's right.
and facts that give them justification for their behaviors. Is that incorrect?
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, I mean, it's basically they don't want there to be a moral authority over them. So they can do anything they want, I guess. I mean, that's really the result of it, right? And Darwinism is a scientific way to get there.
Yep.
That's what I needed you to say. I needed you to say that Darwin is, for the medical world, for the science world, it's going to be Darwinism, just as it is for people who, submit themselves to cults. And this is a totally random question that came to my mind, and maybe I shouldn't say it, but religious Scientology, is that the same thing, or is Scientology the religion, like nothing really connected to the science world? Just a question, Neil.
No, the scientism, if you will, materialism, meaning science is the answer to all things. Not Scientology, the religion, which is just really weird, but it's not related. Yeah.
Got it. Anyone else have some comments? I am going to read another page or two. We're coming up close to an hour. Anyone in our audience have questions? Just raise your hand. We will bring you up. I see on Facebook or YouTube. Let's see. We have a comment from Brad Wheeler on Facebook. He says, when the vax first came out, there was a notice from the medical authorities that the minority communities were to get the vax first. Not being discriminatory, but with the lack of info and testing, I found it strangely bizarre that they were subjecting the minority community first.
Well,
thank you, Brad. Thank you very much. That is a good thought. So, science. Let's see. Let's continue here with Darwin. To this very day, great numbers of everyday people believe and embrace Darwin's theories because Darwin was perceived as a scientific and anthropological authority, in some circles regarded as a genius. Many believe Darwin's theories, irrespective of their diabolical precepts. Darwin's specific, albeit inconvenient, assertions posited as theories that unleashed America's racism and white supremacy surely demand our full attention. Even though Darwin shares the exact same birthday as Abraham Lincoln, February 12, 1809, the two men were destined to lead the world in opposite directions. Borrowing from the Declaration of Independence, Lincoln reasserted all men are created equal in his November 19, 1863 Gettysburg Address. Around that same time, Darwin's theories of evolution was unleashed, and it declared that men were not created equal at all. Instead, they evolved. Additionally, Darwin proclaimed that all men are not equal, and held that some are more evolved than others. Note how diametrically opposed the two worldviews are. The original title of Darwin's first book and most famous work illuminates his heart and intentions. It also confirms how he redoubled racism and white supremacy in America. Darwin's signature work was titled On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Preservation of Most Favored Races in the Struggle for Life, 1859. Let me say that title again in case somebody wants to go look it up. This is the title. On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Preservation of Most Favored Races in the Struggle for Life, 1859. The book's title alone confirms Darwin made a distinction between races. In this and subsequent writings, he was fervent in assuring supremacy existed. Darwin asserted that Caucasian race, white Europeans, as a superior race, and likened blacks to apes and savages. Darwin went out of his way to characterize an idyllic and almost angelic caricature for whites, while gratuitously putting blacks and aborigines at the bottom of the evolutionary scale, just slightly above the parasitical level. His writings asserted empirical evidence that there are distinctions between races, with white Caucasians as supreme and all races locked in a perpetual competition in the struggle for life. If you're awakening, this should begin to clarify the scientific instantiation of white supremacy. I'm going to stop there. And so what we're not trying to do is we are not trying to make white people feel guilty. This has nothing to do with saying because some person declared your race as supreme and superior that you had nothing to do with that. That's not what we're talking about right now. What we're doing is talking about a theory, a belief, a scientific facts, studies, papers, curriculum that have been written that allow for certain races to be deemed subhuman. And when you do that, what will happen is even subtly, you begin to take liberties with human life that you normally would not take if you felt that it was the same, if you felt that you had a moral authority that you had to answer to. So I'm going to give Kevin, Lonnie, and Neil some last words, and then we'll close up our conversation for today. Kevin, you go first.
Yeah, so everybody may not know that I'm the president and chairman of the Frederick Douglass Foundation of California as well. So, I was just reading a little bit more about Douglass earlier today, and Douglass was the only one in his time, it's been noted in his biography, that truly believed that all ethnicities were absolutely equal. There was no distinction between ethnicities. Now, Douglass had to fight for that because even Lincoln, at some level, felt like, you Black African slaves, you should probably go back to Africa. And Douglass, because they were close friends, had a candid conversation with Abraham Lincoln. He says, no. We want the American heritage. We want the Declaration and the Constitution, everything that's protected here. We know nothing about Africa, and we don't want to go back there. So anyway, but it's interesting because he had to literally fight for that during the 1860s. Now, if you look at the date of Darwin's works, where he started to make these distinctions about races, is about 1859. So prior to that time, this whole idea about literally people not being equal. Now you had your people opportunistically, you say, look, those people are fools, those people are this, those people are that. That just happens because you're around your own people and you're going to be tribal to some degree. But there was never a scientist to come down and say, look, these people are still evolving. Remember my evolution thing? Here, this is an example. Look at these people. They're literally subhuman. You can see they're still evolving. That thinking then really began to cement in society. So Douglas had to redouble his efforts to kind of work and say, no, really, we're all ethnicities are equal. Because they were fighting at that time to make sure they keep Asians out, people from China and stuff like that. And Douglas had to really fight. No, people from China are fine. Let these. So I mean, it was a whole thing, and it's just interesting to see that this one biographer said, "Look, he was the only one in his time to really stand up for everybody and say, look, there's no distinctions." So that's just some additional background. I think it may help somebody, but gives you a little bit more context on the real struggle after Darwin came out with his theories. It was a struggle to try to get back to even kelter and have everybody be equal again.
Excellent. Lonnie, go ahead.
On point, Kevin. And I would add that what we're not saying is one race is more evil than another race. What we're pointing out is how a group of individuals, with one individual who was most prominent historically, was able to use science to propagate a belief that one race was less than another race, and therefore justify the atrocities that came forward after he had taken this position. So it's really interesting to find out, because at the same time all these things were taking place historically in America, you had the abolitionist movement, who were whites in America, who stood for liberty for all Americans, and that we were all equal, just as the Constitution, our founding documents point out. It's really interesting. I just keep getting, it hitting me upside the head how powerful one individual utilizing words could shift the mindset of a group of people in a nation and throughout the world, that ended up pushing an agenda that subjugated other races of people, including blacks front and center, to be truly second class on the world scene. Thank you, Gina.
I guess I'm up.
Yes, sir.
I've already said a lot, so I'm not going to say too much, except that just to summarize, the thing that Darwin did is it allowed people to have a scientific basis for evil, to justify their evil against other people. It allowed the sin nature of man to give it a veneer of science, when in reality, science, if you think about it, science cannot exist without God.
Yeah.
Because science needs God to exist. Because otherwise, why do things make sense? Why are we able to even understand science unless we have a mind that was created to be able to understand science? As some atheists have said, if I think my mind is the result of some random accidents, why would I trust the result of random accidents to give me truth?
Are you dropping the mic there, Neil?
Yeah. I guess that was all I needed to say.
Okay, it'd be great if you yeah, I'm done. Because I'm waiting for you to say more. It's good. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to wrap this up today. And I love these conversations. And let's see, I'm counting the pages. We got through 4 pages of the book, just because we stop and have dialogue. So much to talk about. So if you've not gotten the book, Please go to Amazon and you can find Woke Up by Kevin McGarry. Please visit our website at everyblm.com. And you can also go to our YouTube channel, YWU University. So there's 2 U's in there. YWU University. Y'all Woked Up University.com. You type that in, it'll take you right to our YouTube channel. And you can listen to more. And we've also been putting these out on podcast. So you'll be able to find the podcast. The replays are here in this club. So please make sure you hit the greenhouse, join the club. And we're here every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And on the podcast channels, you can find us on the basics, Stitcher, Google, Anchor, Spotify, Apple, iTunes. We are there. So during those times, on those particular platforms. So if all hearts and minds are clear, no one has any other comments or anything to say? Major Daughter, have any last words? If not, we'll close the room. Minister Jackie, good to see you. Epiphany and Joy, thank you so much for joining us. Okay, we will close this room then in 5, 4. Oh, she just ordered her book. Very good, Major Daughter. Closing this room in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everyone have a blessed day.
Bye now.